Do you have a client that always makes excuses? They always have a reason why they can't do something or why they didn't do something. Or maybe they never follow through with what they say. So they say, I'm going to eat lean protein with every meal, but then they don't do it. Or they're unmotivated. They're always conflicted about change and never feel like they really want to commit to their change, to their goal. Or you get lazy responses, something like, I don't know, or they say, you're the coach, you should do the thinking. Maybe they're withholding important information. You try to dig deeper, you try to understand what's going on better, but they always give you very surface level responses. Or when you try to explain something to them, you see their eyes gloss over and their thoughts are somewhere else, so they don't listen to you. If these are client challenges that you face, make sure that you subscribe for more videos like this and coaching tips in general. So let's jump in and see what we can do as coaches. Understanding excuses. Excuses, of course, are a way for our clients to justify their behavior. So maybe they didn't do something, or they did something else, or they didn't follow through. And it can be quite frustrating for us, and we maybe argue against these excuses, we make them small, and we let the client know, oh, but you should do that. That's just an excuse. But this really can create a lot of tension between you and your client. And the worst thing that you can have is discord, the tension between you and your client. Because in motivational interviewing, discord is the strongest predictor of no change. So if you argue with your client, you are essentially making sure that they don't change. So instead of working against, we always want to work alongside with them. So we are more the guide. So instead of arguing, try to be curious and compassionate. So instead of what they're saying, instead of calling what they're saying excuses, assume these are valid reasons and concerns for the client. See this as an opportunity to learn something about your client, because they very well mean it that these are good reasons why they cannot do it, even though you may not see them as big reasons. Remember, it's always a conversation between two experts, you as the nutrition coach or personal trainer, and them as the experts in their life. And instead of thinking what the client should do, take the client-centered perspective and ask them what they want to do and what they are actually able to do. And last but not least, instead of arguing for change, allow no change. Allow them to decide what to work on, or allow a change of direction. So that's very important. The moment we don't give our clients anything to resist against, they are free to decide, where do I want to go? That's so important. So instead of calling them excuses and telling the client what to do, let them be the expert and work alongside with them towards a common goal. A couple more tips that you can use when you have a client that always has excuses. Start with empathy. So let them know that change is hard, and ambivalence, this feeling of, oh, I want one thing and another thing, is a normal process. Develop discrepancies, so highlight, oh, you said you want to do this, and now you're telling me why you cannot do them. So what's the thing here? Tell me the story behind this. And then you can learn a ton about what is maybe going on between their goals and their current situation, and you can help them release some of these tensions or work around them. And another thing that is super critical are reflections. So instead of arguing against excuses, try to reflect them, give them back to them. Oh, so making time for prepping your meals is very important, or is a challenge, instead of trying to jump in and argue or fix the situation. And if you want to learn more how to give good reflections, I've linked a video where I talk about reflections here. How can we understand inconsistency? For us, it's super frustrating when a client says, "Oh, I'm going to eat 5 servings of vegetables every day," and then they don't do it. We feel bad as a coach. We think they are lazy, and then the thoughts go on with, "Oh, I'm a bad coach. I won't get clients. My business won't grow," and so on and so on. And so it's very easy to blame them for being lazy or don't having the will or the motivation. But instead of blaming, try to get curious and learn what is holding them back. So the biggest issue most of the time when people are not following through with something is they are not able to. Maybe they lack the knowledge or maybe the skill to execute a specific next action. So if we talk about making smart carb choices, they may not know how to cook them, how to prepare them, how to choose them. So always make sure that your client exactly knows how to do the next action. And here are a few more things that you can use when you have a client that's not following through. Use a confidence ruler. So on a scale from 1, essentially I'm not confident at all, to 10, absolutely confident, how able are you to make smart carb choices every day? And if they say, "Oh, I'm a 5 or a 6, then you can explore this further. And I talked about this here in this video. Always consider shrinking the change. I know there's this feeling of, "Oh, if I make the change so small, it doesn't have an effect anymore." But we have to understand that change itself is a skill. So if we teach our clients how to change first, the next bigger changes will be easier because they have practiced changing. So one thing that I always tell them, a small change is something that you can do when you slept late, your boss was horrible all day long, you had to work over shift, you come home, the dog pooped on the floor, and while you're cooking, you drop a full bowl of olive oil in the kitchen. If all that happens on the same day, you still have to be able to do this one small thing. If you talk with clients in this way, then the changes will be very small, but they can do them consistently. And here's the kicker: on the good days, they can do more. And they can always celebrate and pat themselves on the shoulder, thinking, "Oh, cool, I did so much more. Coach asked me to eat one meal with a smart carb choice, and I ate 3 meals. Every meal the last 2 weeks was a smart carb choice, but a coach asked me to just one." So they come to you energized, telling you how amazing the last 2 weeks went, instead of, "Oh, I did only 11 out of 14 days." So very important to shrink the change. And then another part that I often see coaches do or neglect is be precise about what they are going to do. So think about it that the moment your client leaves the session, they already have thought about everything. When they're going to do it, how they're going to do it, how often they're going to do it, what success looks like, how they're going to track their progress, or how they track if they did or didn't do it. So everything has to be clear. And I've shown how to do this in a video here where I showed a demo of a coaching session with motivational interviewing. How can we understand when a client doesn't feel motivated? So we have to understand that a client's life is very complex and there are always competing commitments, worries, and mixed feelings about change. And if you're worried about change, if you have competing commitments, it can lead to inaction and indecisiveness. And we can call them unmotivated, we can call them lazy, we can say they don't have the will or the why. But most often we have to explore the ambivalence. We have to essentially look at this tension that they are feeling about change. All change involves loss. And this sounds big, but think about it. They have to leave part of them behind. The person that likes to sit on the couch on Saturday, or the person that eats ice cream every time they're sad, or the person that's kind of let's go with the flow with their eating. They have to leave all that behind to embrace something new. And especially if maybe food has been a big part to help them cope with difficult emotions, they have to leave a big part of their toolbox to deal with difficult emotions. They have to leave that behind. So never forget, change always involves loss and always involves grief. I want to really hone in on this idea of change is not always easy. It's very rarely it's easy, because when we commit to something, if we commit to running every day or running 3 times a week, we commit to not sitting on the couch with our loved ones. We're committing to not watching our favorite TV series. So when we say yes to something, we always say no to something else. And sometimes this something else can be very valuable for the client. For us as coaches, we might think, yeah, it's a TV series, fitness is so much important. But we always have to remember the client changes, and they very well see a lot of value and they have a lot of emotional connection to maybe a TV series or something else that they're leaving behind. A powerful way to think about changing and motivation is that our clients always get what they want. They always are motivated, but oftentimes to do something else. And to help them move into the right direction, we have to go through a couple of steps. First, we have to remove all barriers to change. So we have to explore ambivalence, which we'll do in a second, and we have to reduce resistance, and we will talk about resistance in this video as well. Then we have to make it too easy. I know this sometimes sounds weird, but clients often cannot follow through with their action because they don't know how to do it. And if we make the change so easy, then they barely have any reason not to do it, especially if we then, in the third step, connect their actions with a deep purpose. And we will explore finding their why, the reasons for change here in a second. But it's very important if we first have to address the ambivalence, the loss, and the grief before we can move on to taking action. So how can we do that? We have 4 crazy questions that allow us to explore their whys, why they want to change. And the crazy part about here is we start with the counterintuitive. So what is bad about changing? What do you have to give up or lose if you change? This gives a voice to their ambivalence. They can express what they may just feel but never have talked about. And also a follow-up question is, so what is good about not changing? So what is good about the situation right now? Because there's another assumption very often in coaches that they understand their clients, but they have never been their clients. They have never experienced their lives and what they've gone through. So there may be some very valuable things that they're currently doing that are holding them back. So if we don't give a voice to these thoughts, they can always hold us back. And very often, you already hear clients expressing this, feeling this, and then being able to move past ambivalence. And you hear this in change talk, and we will talk about recognizing change talk here in a second. But there's another part of the crazy questions, and that is the benefits. So what is good about changing? What might you gain? And this is where you have to listen and where you learn their whys. They essentially give you all the reasons why they want to change. And the last part is what is good, what is bad about not changing. So how is the current situation harming them? And you can even push this a little further and think, oh, if you continue with your behavior for the next 5 years, where will you end up? Listen to what they're saying, because we often look at our clients as the nutrition client, but they are a whole person, and they will tell you everything, all their values, all their priorities, all their beliefs. And in this way, you can understand the whole person better. What are the tensions? Why do they like to sit on the couch? Why do they like to run? Why do they want to eat ice cream with their kids? Why do they want to stop eating ice cream and look better for their partner? So if you explore the 4 crazy questions, don't look at the next question. Instead, listen very, very carefully, because what you will learn is essentially everything that is going on inside them, all their tensions, what's keeping them at the status quo, and what the reasons are to move forward. I mentioned it already. Recognize the change talk. So change talk is everything that leads the client towards change. And I talked in this video here how to recognize change talk and how to respond to change talk. But essentially, their change talk is their why. And they give you lots and lots and lots of reasons why they want to move forward and also why they want to stay the same. And this is where reflective listening and specifically picking out certain parts of their responses that are so helpful in motivational interviewing. So instead of jumping in and fixing and arguing, you do reflections. You reflect back what they're saying. Oh, you want to lose weight because you want to play with your grandchildren, and that's very important to you. You want to be a role model for your kids as well. And then you have to specifically pick and choose the parts in their responses that favor change. So you very strategically nurture the part in your client that wants to change by reflecting. And that is a super critical and important concept to understand. They talk about change, you reflect change back to them, and then they respond to that again. And so you build these small layers of commitment. They're saying it out loud, they're hearing from you, they're responding to you. And this is how motivational interviewing can create these amazing results, because you slowly stack up small commitments until they take action or they take massive action. So being able to recognize change talk is so critical and important. And then being able to reflect. So make sure that you check out the video that I've linked above, and I've also linked it in the comments. How can we understand lazy responses? So when a client says something like, I don't know, or they say, you're the coach, you should do the thinking for me. I know this can be super, super frustrating, but here the solution as well is to be curious. So what is going on? And lazy responses often can have very different reasons. One part is a lack of connection. So you try to ask deep questions, like the crazy questions, what's holding you back? But you haven't built the trust with the client. They may have never talked about this before, and you try to jump in. So maybe it's just too early and you haven't built this client-coach relationship with them. Maybe it's a lack of awareness. So they really haven't thought about themselves in this way before. And we don't simply gain awareness and insights into ourselves by asking questions. This very often takes time, and clients have to think about it and think about it and think about it. And then also through that process, these answers and these thoughts change. So maybe you have to be a little bit more patient. Another reason is they are not ready to change. It's very difficult for us fitness professionals to think a client would choose to not change, but it's the far easier choice. Not to think for yourself, not to take action, not to take care of yourself. This is so much easier. You don't have to explain why you gain weight. You don't have to explain why you're a failure. It just happens. It's a very easy choice. So that can happen very often. And the last part is discord. So you and your client have different perspectives on the same issue, and you are arguing in one direction and they arguing in a different direction. And this can create a break or at least tension in the client-coach relationship. And as I've said earlier, this is the biggest predictor for non-change, because essentially they are angry or disappointed with you, and then they don't change because these difficult feelings came up. And we will go into Discord in a second. So a couple more coaching tips. First, be patient. Motivation interviewing is not a one-sitting solution approach. This takes time. Sometimes it's helpful to share something relevant about your life first before you ask your clients deep questions. So maybe you have experience with abuse, emotional eating, struggling with burnout. Maybe you can share these experiences, the relevant part of them, with your client first to build this connection, and then they might be more open to talk about it with you. And I know this can be triggering for some of you, but sometimes it's okay to let go of a client. We cannot make anyone change. And sometimes it needs a little bit more time before they are ready. A few more things have to happen, maybe inside of them or outside of them, before they can commit to change. How can we understand not listening? And this is almost an offensive behavior. You explain something and they are not listening, or they glaze over and their thoughts go somewhere else. And instead of speaking louder or more rigorously or getting their attention, pause here and get curious again. This might be a sign of resistance. And resistance has two components. There's this one part that's sustained talk. So that's essentially everything that favors the status quo. You make a suggestion like, oh, how about eating 5 portions of vegetables every day? And they say, no, I don't like vegetables at all. And if you then argue towards eating vegetables and why they are so important, they will argue more why they don't like it. And then this tension, you create this tension, you essentially make your client your enemy. And they at some point say, oh, you're not listening to me, you don't understand how stressful this is. And this is a super difficult situation. And in the motivational interviewing research, it shows it's the strongest prediction for non-change, because they create this emotional feeling towards, no, I don't want this, or I'm angry with them, he doesn't understand me, and they cannot focus on changing their behaviors. So how can discord look like? They appear like they're not listening to you. Maybe they're blaming you. Oh, coach, you gave me the wrong ideas, the wrong papers, the wrong action step. You may have. Why are you even qualified? They interrupt you. They talk over you. So you're explaining something, and they talk over you why that's not valid or why this is a stupid idea. Or they plainly pay no attention. They change the subject. And you can understand, if you have a client that is in front of you that shows this behavior, maybe not as aggressive, but maybe just, yeah, Let him talk. Okay. hmm hmm You can see how this won't lead to anything productive. So when you notice discord, it's very important to pause, to respect their resistance, and try to work with the resistance. Don't work against it. Sometimes you need to apologize, or maybe you have to go back to, oh, okay, so what's going on? Let's find this connection again. And here, empathy is always super important. Like, oh, okay, I noticed there's something going on here. Can you tell me what's going on? Don't try to force yourself through their resistance. Don't try to give them all the reasons why being overweight is difficult. If they're in this emotional, irrational situation where they have this, oh, I don't want to talk with you, all their defenses are up and you will not get through. So you have to step back, let them cool down, have to restart the conversation in a way, restart the connection, and then maybe you find a new way. And this is where it is so important. What many coaches do wrong is they think they're the expert. And if the client is not listening, then they feel like, oh, you don't respect me, or you don't think I'm an authority, and they speak louder and give more and more and more arguments why something is happening. Well, essentially, it's the reason for their behavior is something else, that there's a break or at least a big tension in the relationship between the coach and the client. First, avoid the expert role. Looking from the outside, it's easy to say change is easy, but it never is. So they are not excuses. They are valid reasons why your client cannot change. The client is not unmotivated. They are conflicted between two outcomes. Do I want this or do I want that? If they struggle to be consistent, make it easier. Change is the fundamental skill that our clients have to learn first. And maybe start with very small changes that the client decides every day. Oh, I will pick up the garbage. I will make 5 push-ups in the morning. I will respond to all emails. Small changes. And when they have practiced changing, and if they have practiced setting small goals, then you can build momentum over time, and bigger changes are possible. And last but not least, curiosity. Always try to be curious. Whenever something happens, when your client does something that irritates you or that you don't understand, get curious, try to learn what's going on. It's always a great opportunity to say, hey, I've noticed this. What's the story here? What's going on? If you want to learn more, I've included an introduction to motivational interviewing as well as a demo. And you can also learn about the 4 essential steps that you have to go through to lead your client from starting the conversation to a specific next action that you're going to do. Thank you so much for watching.